Hello, welcome to the podcast Justice Unbound about women, religion, and the state of Israel. I'm your host today, Rivkah. Justice Unbound is written and produced by the Center for Women's Justice, CWJ. Today, we are going to talk about a list of people who are prohibited from marrying in Israel, which is sometimes referred to as the Blacklist. What a topic, a blacklist. So, in Israel, there is a list of people that are prohibited from marrying. This list is kept and managed by the Chief Rabbinate, which holds jurisdiction over personal status for Jews. I know it sounds terrible, and that's because it is. There are about 7,000 people on this list. According to data that we have from the Israel Democracy Institute, over 50% of the individuals on this list are in the category of being non-Jewish. That is to say, they presented themselves to the religious courts as Jews, but the religious courts didn't think so. We will talk about this group in a different episode. That is, people who came to Israel as Jews, but the rabbinate does not accept them to be Jewish. Under 50% of the individuals that are on the list are Jewish people who are prohibited from marrying any other Jew or just specific Jews. We're going to be discussing this group today, and we have a lot to unpack here. So, today I'll be focusing on some 3,000 individuals that are on the blacklist, being Jewish and prohibited from marrying others. In Israel, many people have heard of this list but have no idea what it's about and how it came to be. It's very troublesome to think that few people understand what this list is all about, and it's very hard to get information about it. It's very secretive. In this episode, I would like to address the following questions. Number 1, why is there a list and how did this list start? Number 2, who is on the list, or rather, what categories of individuals are on the list? Number 3, how did these individuals get onto the list? And when does a person find out that they're included on the list? And in the end, how will they be able to ever get off the list? So let's start from the beginning. Why is there a list and how did all this start? As we mentioned above, according to the law in Israel, the authority to marry Jews is in the hands of the rabbinate and is done in accordance with Jewish law. According to Jewish law, certain Jews are not allowed to marry certain other Jews, and some Jews, although very few, are prohibited from marrying at all. The registrars in Israel see it as their responsibility to make sure that nobody marries anybody else that he or she is not allowed to marry according to Jewish law. In fact, way before the establishment of the Jewish state, rabbis who married couples kept notebooks filled with names of people who were for various reasons not allowed to get married. These notebooks were in accordance with the regulations of the religious courts. So when a couple would come before the registrar to get married, the registrar would ask them for some kind of proof that both the bride and the groom were Jewish, and then he would check his notebook to see if any one of them was on his list. If he wasn't sure about any one of them, he would maybe ask around and make a call to a rabbi in another area to hear from him. Maybe he knows any reason not to allow one of them to get married or not to allow this couple to marry each other. This led to messy things happening, like big misunderstandings and names that got into the notebooks from hearsay, or even people being on the list by mistake. In 1976, Aharon Barak, former president of the Supreme Court in Israel and then Attorney General of Israel, put order in all this and sent out a circular with new guidelines about these notebooks that the rabbis had been holding. The rabbis were from now on to put all the names into one central list. This list was to be closed, even to the rabbis, the registrars themselves. It was to be private and to be handled directly by the Ministry of Religious Services. Now let's be clear. The guidelines that Aharon Barak put out assume that the marriage registrars and rabbinical courts do have the official authority to check whether someone is allowed to get married under religious law and to have a list of people prohibited from marrying. He didn't see having a list as being a problem. But at the same time, the guidelines laid out important rules for how this authority should be used. Decisions must be based on solid evidence. The person involved must be given a chance to explain their side before they are put on the list. The list shouldn't be open to all the hundreds of registrars working across the country. Instead, the registrars would be able to ask for information about specific individual cases when needed. So, that answers the question of how the list started and why. And now, who is on the list? What are the categories? There are over 10 different categories. Let's look at some of them. One category is couples that have committed adultery. Yes, I am not kidding. The Ministry of Religion in Israel holds a list of people who have committed adultery. Let's explain. According to Jewish law, a married woman who has had relations with another man is then forbidden to continue being with her husband and is also forbidden to marry the man who she had relations with. This halachic rule is called Asura leba'ala ulebo'ala. She is forbidden to be with her husband and with her adulterer. A woman like this might find herself on the list, together with the man she had relations with. It's important to note that a married man who has relations with another woman does not get on a list, and it's not such a great sin, unless the other woman was married to a different man. But that's a different story. So going back to our story, on the list it would say that Mrs. X is not allowed to marry Mr. Y because they had a sinful relationship. Obviously, either of them can marry anyone else, but they can't marry each other. From data published in 2021 by the IDI, we see that there were 456 such people on the list in that category. Now, you might wonder, how would this information get to the religious courts, who then sent their names to the list? And also, why are there only 456 people on the list? I imagine there are a lot more couples who had relations outside of the marriage. Who are we kidding? The answer to that is that you only get on the list if your case was brought before a religious court. And then the dayanim, the religious judges, may decide to send your names to the list. So how would this get brought before a religious court? This would be brought into court in one of two ways. Either as part of the divorce suit, the husband may claim that the wife was not faithful to him and therefore he demands a divorce. If she does not agree to the divorce, the husband may go through the procedure of trying to prove his accusations about his wife's adultery. In that case, after the court hears the evidence of the woman being with another man, the court will most probably put her and the other man on the list. They'll be on the list forever, probably. They will never be able to get married in Israel because if they would try to go to get married, when they go to register to get married, the registrar will see that their names are on the list. The second way one might get on the list is even if the topic of the woman being with another man never came up at a court session. Sometimes, just before the rabbis give their judgment for the get, or just when they are writing up the divorce papers, they may turn to the husband and ask him to name anyone that his wife has been with while she was married to him. If a man mentions a name, the rabbis may turn to the woman and get her response. But they may not. If they ask for her response, she may admit that she'd been unfaithful, and then her and his name will get on the list. Or she may deny it. If she denies it, the rabbis may let it go, or they may pressure her. She then usually understands that she will not get her divorce if she doesn't admit to being with this person that was just named. I've seen it play out in real life. A rabbi looked at a 21 or 22-year-old girl who had been separated for 4 years from her husband and stared at her till she finally admitted that she was with this other guy. But the rabbis have been known to just write down any name and any number of names that the husband blurts out, even without any proof or without the woman admitting to it. The rabbis will write it down in the decision, and they may send the names to the blacklist. It's up to them. They really do whatever they want. The only way that the woman and man can get off the list would be to go back to court and fight it. That is not so simple. You have to claim and prove that you weren't with this man, or at least try and prove that the court put you on the list without proving that you were with him. It's literally a nightmare. We tried that once with a woman that we were representing, and it didn't work, and she finally gave up and still has her name on the list together with his name. So who else is on the list? Well, here's another category of people on the list. It's called Yachad Leachar HaGerushin, together after divorced. There were 704 people in 2021 in this category. What's wrong with that? Why would the rabbinate be interested in couples living together after they're divorced? Well, according to Jewish law, if you are divorced and under the same roof for a night, you are suspected of having relations. If you are divorced and have relations, you are considered married and in need of a new divorce. How did that come to be? This is because of a rule, En Adam Oseh Beilato Beilat Znut, which means a man does not have relations with the intention of it being fornication, but rather for marriage. I'm not sure I would agree with that rule at all. Luckily, many rabbis claim that it applies only to divorced couples. So it basically means that once you're divorced, you can find yourself remarried very easily by only being under the roof with your ex-husband a night and being suspected of having sexual relations with him. We actually have had a case where the woman was very poor and had no place to go, and the husband took her back in to stay in the house. When the rabbis found out at one of the court hearings that she is still with him after the divorce, they made a note of it and their names were sent to the blacklist. Now, if she would ever go to get married again to another person, she would be told that she needs to get a second divorce from her first husband. Another category would be Kohanim and divorcees. A Kohen is not allowed to marry a divorcee, but not all the Kohanim and divorcees get on the list, obviously, for sure. But if you go to the registrar and he is not sure of your situation, maybe you're not a Kohen, maybe she's not a divorcee, and you are then sent to the court for a decision on that, if they decide that you are forbidden to be with each other, they will put your names on the list. Who else is on the list? Mamzerim. Mamzerim are children born to forbidden sexual unions. They are forbidden to marry any Jew unless he or she is a convert or a mamzer. There are hundreds of people on the list as mamzerim, and more in the category called needed to be checked. So let's recap. We've mentioned a number of categories in this blacklist. Non-Jews who can't marry Jews, couples who have committed adultery and are forbidden to marry each other, couples who have lived together after divorce and therefore the woman cannot marry again until she's divorced a second time from the first one, Kohanim and divorcees who cannot marry each other, mamzerim who can't marry anyone except other mamzerim and converts, and those who need to be checked about their being mamzerim maybe. When do you find out if you're on the list? Usually you find out when you register to get married and your name gets noted as being on the list. You will then have to go to the religious courts to prove your case. That can take years, and most people just let it go and marry outside of the rabbinate. Is there any chance of doing away with this list? Probably not. The only way around it is to get married privately, even in a religious wedding, not through the rabbinate, where they don't hold a list, or to get married civilly outside of Israel. Before we wrap up, I would like to say that the Jewish people lived without lists for many generations. Jews living in Israel, a democratic state, should be able to get married in some way, even if Jewish law forbids it. But at this time and age, it is not possible. We believe that there should be civil marriage in Israel. Even religious marriages don't need all this. As I've already said above, we did quite well without it throughout history. Thank you for listening to Center for Women's Justice's podcast, Justice Unbound, Women, Religion, and the State of Israel. This podcast was produced thanks to the generous support of the Gimbrich Family Foundation. Thank you, Susan Weiss and Rachel Stomel, for all your help. I'm Rivkah Lubitch. Stay tuned for next time when we expect to go into the topic of mamzerim.